Nope. No fun shirt today. We're just going with the coastal pines representing. I'll try to have something nice and colorful next time. Anyway, here we are. As usual, I am absolutely swamped with grading. So I am going to kind of keep things, pretty simple and quick again this time. But let's talk for a few minutes as we move forward. I talked with the face to face classes about this today. We're coming up to midterm. Now, midterm is kind of an important date because that's one of the determining factors when if you drop the class, that's one of the things that that date can determine whether or not you get a withdraw or withdraw F. That withdraw F can be very destructive to your GPA. So if you really feel like you need to drop the class, now's the time to really start thinking about that. Because once that date passes, things get a lot more complicated than they have been as far as, getting out of the class if you need to. Anyway, I would hope that you guys wouldn't need to, but you get something you can think about for the other classes as well. If anybody's behind, please talk with me because I'm still very much in the mode where I want to help you guys out as much as I possibly can, which kind of should be the overall goal of a teacher. COVID-19 is still raging out of control. And so if you're behind on a few things, just let me know. I'll do it. I'll try to catch you up. It's still very possible to get caught up and get where you need to be. Now, as far as this self-eval goes, I've been thinking a lot about it and trying to shape it a little bit more. And I want to start, writing up some rubric stuff. It's not due till, let me see, just to give you a preliminary due date, not next week, but the next. So October 21st. I really want this thing, I don't want to call it a soft pitch, but you guys just wrote this long eco narrative. I'm grading now. You've written the oppression piece. So I think it's fair to have something that's just a little bit, not as high impact. This thing really is supposed to be self-reflective, right? You're supposed to be thinking a lot about your goals, trying to identify what your challenges are, right? So that's the main thing I want to talk about today. And like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but let's go over what I've been seeing so far, and let's talk about some of the things I want you to look for. The main thing, I think right now, going back and grading most of the stuff, I think expansion is going to be something you guys need to think about. Like the gift of gab and the ability to just put stuff on the page still seems to be something that bothers you guys so much. And, I think I've made mention in the past a few times. I used to be all about not believing in writer's block because, I'm the kind of guy who could just put stuff on a page, no problem. Honestly, I don't feel that way anymore. I kind of get it. I don't know if it's just been stress from stuff that's been going on, but I'm looking at about 7 months that I've really struggled to put stuff on the page, and it's really starting to bother me. I did publish a collection of poetry, and I got something published not too terribly long ago, but as far as my creative output goes, it has been very, very stifled. So for those of you who are struggling to meet the page lengths, oh man, my poor 1101 students in one of the other classes. And it's funny too, because they're like, one of them came up to me and was like, Mr. Bailey, you're intimidating. And I'm like, me? Intimidating? Come on. I'm a soft little teddy bear, you idiot. No, I'm kidding. I guess, but I could see where I can be kind of intense when you sit down with me and talk to me. So I kind of get it. But they've been bringing me their papers because I do live grading with them where we sit down and talk about it. And man, that 4 pages really punched them right between the eyes. It was obvious that, writing that kind of length is something that's extremely unusual for them. So like, that's one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is how do we fill these page requirements? The next few assignments are going to be doozies, upwards of 6 to 8 pages. So if you're looking for something, to kind of think about writing about, it's like, well, how do we generate more content on the page? And what can you do to help yourself accomplish that? And I think as we talk about these let me just go ahead and throw this out there. What I want you to do for today is Identify 3 of your potential weaknesses. Now, I think I said 5 for your strengths, but we'll do 3 weaknesses today. And you guys can go and post this in the self-eval forum, just like you've been doing with everything else. But I want you to think of some weaknesses that you have. And these weaknesses or these challenges don't necessarily have to be on the technical end of the writing, but they can be, right? So if you want to talk about how hard it is for you to cut out those passive verbs, have at it. If you want to talk about how confusing these comma rule things that we're going over is, that's great too. But I also want you to think really long and hard about aspects of your writing that aren't necessarily relegated to like just straight up technical parts of it. Do you have trouble creating a routine for yourself, right? When do you write? I would imagine, and this is not a slight against you guys. This is just kind of an observation. I'd be willing to bet most of you guys sit down the night before something is due and you hammer it all then, right? That's not a very good writing routine. And the thing is, like, I say that very understanding of how students typically do things. And that's why for this class, you've probably noticed as we do assignments, I make you do those little chunks of bits of pieces of it along and along. I'm forcing you, or at least really encouraging you, to go in and take little bite-sized chunks out of these assignments so that when you do sit down that night before it's due and you hammer the whole thing out, you're not sitting down and just hammering the whole thing from scratch. You have little breadcrumbs that you can sort of go back and rehash and rethink. For me, that's an important part of process. And that's one thing that I've been trying lately to try to conquer my own writer's block. I know it's weird to hear your teacher talk about things they're struggling with. I think it's important though, right? Just because I'm teaching English doesn't mean that I'm like a master. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect. I've been trying to set aside time every day to sit down and write and actually hand write to try to get my brain working again. I'm having to put effort into that. And because writing is something that's extremely important to me. And I've gotten out of that process. I've gotten out of the, I guess I've already used the main word. I've gotten out of the routine of it. So maybe it's your routine you want to work on. Do you want to expand your vocabulary? So you'll notice that another one of the things I'm doing here is as I'm encouraging you to identify your weaknesses, I also kind of want you to think about your goals a little bit. If you know a weakness, you already have a goal that's associated with that. If you feel your vocabulary is not very strong, and that's one of the things that I do have in droves. I've got vocabulary. I can just anti-disestablishmentarianism. Boo, booyah. I'm sorry. But how does one expand their vocabulary, right? That's not necessarily something that you can look up in a textbook and just sort of fix. Part of the reason that teaching writing is so much more complicated and annoying than teaching something that's very formulaic like math is that writing is very behavior oriented. If you want to improve your writing, you really have to change your behavior. So one of the greatest things that you can do to expand your vocabulary, if you feel like you don't have a lot of words really to choose from, all you can really do is read. Reading it's so healthy. That's one of the things that I've noticed about my classes I need to kind of improve too. I do very writing intensive stuff, right? You're writing. But I do need to pay attention to that reading aspect too. But how on earth do you evaluate that, especially for English 1010 students? And I've said this before. When it comes to English 1010, you guys have lives compared to a lot of the other students. When I'm dealing with high school students, I can just be very mean and very demanding and very angry because I always make the assumption that if it's mostly high school students I'm working with, they don't have lives, right? And if they do, their lives are, relatively relegated to their social interactions. But English 1010 students tend to be more adults, people who have jobs, because you're here for a job that you're trying to land, right? You're here, you're supplementing your skills, you're acquiring skills, and people who are, preoccupied with that type of thing tend to be adults. So how on earth do I give you a big book to read? And then how do I evaluate that? It's already kind of a lot for me to ask you to write 4, 6, 8 pages of stuff. And then I sit down and I come at you and I'm mean to you about it. But golly, one of the healthiest things for your brain, for your writing, for everything is to just read. Even if you're reading dime store, pharmacy, romance novels, that reading is still good for you. It's so daggum good for your brain. Like, I read a lot of news and I read a lot of information. I read a lot of discussion. That's just the type of thing that I'm interested in. And I was shocked to find out the other day, I've been talking to my classes about this. Most of them just don't read. They don't read magazines. They don't read books. And I'm like, gosh, you guys are missing out on a great intellectual experience. And it's very enjoyable. So let's recap for a minute. Some potential weaknesses that you might find within your writing could be everything from process to vocabulary, strength of particular grammar situations. Have I talked to you about your fragments a lot? We haven't talked about fragments too much yet. We will. I know I keep saying we will. Paragraph length is a good one. You guys are still, a lot of you are still giving me these really tiny paragraphs. And those paragraphs don't do you very much good. So you might want to think about, like, how do I lengthen these paragraphs? I'm trying to think of some more esoteric things, because like I said, this assignment isn't just about the technical bits of writing. It's also the behavioral ones, right? It's also those more, maybe you want to improve your confidence. It's one thing, like, I read a study the other day that said student success is really deeply connected to their sense of ability. If you think you're good at language and you think you're good at writing, you will be. And this is kind of one of those weird studies that is kind of stupid, because it's like, yeah, if you have a feeling of confidence, typically a feeling of confidence is at least associated with some ability. Well, not if you look at the Dunning-Kruger effect, but we're not going down that rabbit hole. But confidence usually means that you're going to express yourself and you're going to have a little bit more engagement with the subject. So when it comes to writing, confidence is extremely important. What was really interesting about that paper was the indication that if the student believes the teacher is competent, if the teacher has a level of mastery of the subject, the success rate rises in the classroom, which is really interesting if you stop and think about it. Just the perception of the teacher being masterful of the subject is a huge predictor of success. Students have a tendency to absorb more from a teacher who exudes ability. So one of the things that we really should focus on when we're training new teachers is how do you instill that sense in students of, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy is good at what he does, because it does have a tendency to inspire a lot of progress, and students tend to succeed when they're paired with a teacher that has that kind of confidence. So the interesting stuff. So improving confidence is good too. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is I want you to go into the discussion forum, and I want you to identify 3. I don't want to say weaknesses, actually. I've been saying that, but why don't we say 3 areas you would like to improve, right? And if you want to talk about some goals you'd like to set to improve those areas, that's fine too. This can be very simple, 4 to 5 sentences, just describing these areas you'd like to improve, the goals, blah, blah, blah. Next week, we're going to talk more about how to incorporate your past writing into this self-evaluation, because one of the things I'd really like for you to see, or I would really like to see, would be for you to incorporate some sentences into it, quote yourself, and then go back and suggest ways to improve those sentences. And that's something we'll do when we start doing like the peer response stuff. We're going to do more peer response for the past things that we've written, because we are going to start expanding everything soon. In any case, my wife bought chicken salad the other day from Sam's Club. I don't like to promote companies. Sam's Club's got some good chicken salad. Like, I'm thinking about it right now. I'm getting like, I'm excited for lunch. So in any case, I'm going to wrap this up here. Very simple, keeping it very, light this week, because I am doing the grading thing. We'll have our team session as normal this week. And thank you guys very much for listening and following along. And I am sending you all positive, happy writing vibes.